Welcome to part 3 of our Interac tutorial on VisualLink. In this video, we're going to look at how to retrieve Interac data into a single cell. This is going to provide a non-table view of Interac. We'll see how to provide a variable, such as a vendor number or a job number, and we'll learn how to tweak a SQL command. We'll use multiple queries into one sheet. As a side note, what we're doing could formerly be done with an SQL.REQUEST command, which is no longer supported in Excel. SQL, we've bumped into the name a few times. It is a standardized query language for requesting information from a database. It was originally called SQL and was designed by IBM in the mid-70s and still very much in use today. Let's look at a sample of our desired end result. I've opened the spreadsheet from the video Top 10 Reasons to Consider Interac to show you some illustrations. First, we have an accounts payable example, a job cost example, and a general ledger example. It is interesting to note that on one sheet, we have data coming from 3 very distinct places in Interac. In the accounts payable example, we'll be entering a vendor number, and when I do that, you'll see the information down here change. Here, when I enter a different job, you'll see this information change, as well as the graph. And in our general ledger example, we don't have a place to enter an account number. Those are hardwired in and generate a current ratio direct off the Interac database. Now, there are a few things going on here. I've talked about being able to pull information into one cell, and that is what we're doing down here. I'm going to open up our query window, and our query number 4 pulls into this one cell right here. And this is what I'm referring to when I'm saying you can pull things into one cell. This query pulls information into this cell. This query pulls information into these 2 cells. This query pulls information into these 2 cells based upon the value here. And this query pulls these 2 cells in from the Interac database. We're going to work through each one of these examples. We're in a brand new blank workbook, and we will do our accounts payable example first. We'll go to Data, Get Data from other sources, from Microsoft Query, select our data source, and I'll move the screen over here so we can see it a little better. We will use the accounts payable master file, and that's the only one we're going to use. We will select the name, pressing N for name, and we will choose purchases year to date. We will do one more thing. We wish to have a variable to select the vendor when we do the query. So we're going to add a criteria that the vendor equals, here's the trick, question mark. So when we do the query, it's going to prompt us for a variable as it stands. We'll add that. We'll just put a value in for now. We'll choose one vendor. And now we will close this and return the information to Excel. And we'll stick it down here. Now we will open up our queries and connections. Double click in this to modify the query. And we'll come down to the parameters box. I'm going to choose this option, get the value from the following cell, and it's important to click here, and I'll come up and choose D2, and I like to have it refresh automatically whenever you change the value, and click OK, and we're done. So I'm going to come here And I like to highlight any cells where there's dead entry. So let's try it. We have vendor number 100. We'll now try putting in vendor number 200. And you can see our values have changed. 300 and so forth. Let's do a little more work to clean up our presentation. First, I would like to get rid of the headings and so forth that are here. So we'll go to Data, and as you know, Properties isn't available. We have to click on our data cells for that to show up. So I am going to click on and turn off the automatic column width. As you may have seen, it was expanding and decreasing depending upon the values that are in it. So this turns off that amount of changing that takes place automatically. And I also find better luck with this. Overwrite existing cells with new data, clear unused cells, as opposed to some of these other insert options. Next, we're going to go to Design and turn off the header row. See, that's gone. And turn off banded rows. So you can see it's now white without the shading. And some of these options could be applied to the visual link videos we did before, part 1 and part 2. I've taken the liberty of pausing the video and adding some titles. Before we look at our job cost example, I'd like to look at a job cost report that shows the data we are going to be retrieving. I've folded up the report, which has data in it that we'll be querying upon, and we'll be looking at job number, job description, and also estimated hours and estimated and to date hours. Now, this will be very similar to what we did with the vendor, but here we have multiple phases which make up our total, and we really just wish to see the job total. So we're going to have to do something with our SQL command to make this happen. As we discussed a few minutes ago, the job cost section is going to be composed of 2 queries. So we'll again go to Data, get external data from other sources, select our company ID, and I'll slide this over. And our first query is going to be from the job file, job table. We'll add that, close, and we're going to pull up the name. And the contract amount. Once again, we're going to add criteria that when the job number, job equals question mark. We'll add that criteria. Again, it's prompting me for an initial value. Click OK, and we see our information down below. We will return this to Excel. And I'll pick this for a place for it to land. And here we are. Now we're going to add job to date, correction, job estimated hours, and job actual hours. We'll do another query, data, get data from Microsoft Query. And I'll reposition my window here. This time we're going to go to a different table. We'll go to phases. We're going to add estimated units for category 1, which in the case of my database is hours. And we will look at job to date units for category 1, which again in my case is job to date hours. We'll add a criteria. At the job number equals, again, question mark. Again, it will ask me for a value. And now we see our values down here. And we will return this to Excel. We will return the data to this cell. Now you note we've got really a table here, which we don't want. So we will come into that query, come over to definition, and over to SQL, and here we have select from this table this value, and then from that very same table this value. So we're going to insert the word sum and open brackets and close brackets, and again insert the word sum, open brackets, close brackets, and click OK. We're being prompted for our parameter again. And you can see we've now turned that table into one cell, in this case 2 cells, and these values match what we saw when we looked on the report. Let's now modify these 2 queries to look at this cell for a job number. We'll come here and over to definition, down to parameters. Again, we need to choose this option and click here to anchor it and choose our cell. And I like to select this option also to refresh when the cell value changes. Click OK. We need to do the same thing with this query. Definition, parameters, get the information from a cell, and we'll use, of course, the very same cell, and refresh. So now when we put a value here, our information automatically changes. As we did in the accounts payable example, we'll go to Data, Properties, and turn off the automatic adjustment of column width, and choose the bottom option to override existing cells with new data. And we'll come to Design and turn off the header row and the banded rows. Next, we'll do the very same thing to this query. Oh, pardon me. Data, Properties, turn off the auto adjustment and turn on this override, and over to Design and uncheck header row and banded row. There we are. I'll pause a moment and add some headings. I've added some headings. We'll try it out again here. I'll put in 88001 and we can see our data changing. Let's add a chart. We'll highlight these values, insert, chart, and we'll go with the bar chart. And here it is. I'm not going to bother putting a title in. So we change the job number and the chart automatically changes. Very powerful. Next, we're going to work on a general ledger query. To show that it can be done, we will put our general ledger query on a second sheet. And current ratio is calculated by dividing current liabilities by current assets. We'll first retrieve current assets. Data, get data from other sources, Microsoft Query, 4-character company ID, reposition the screen here, and we are going to use our general ledger master table. General ledger master accounts. That's the only table we need, and the value we're interested in is the balance. note you could do balance last year if you wanted to do a comparative ratio separately. But we will choose the balance. And just so I see the account numbers, I'm going to temporarily drop the account number in. Okay, so we will add some criteria to do a range of just our current assets. So our criteria is going to be that the account number must be greater than or equal to count 100. We'll add that. And our account number must be less than or equal to account number 140. We'll add that criteria. We can see we have two criteria here, and we have a range of accounts. And I really don't want this value to return into Excel, so I'm going to delete it. I just had it here so I could sort of see what was happening. Oops, close that up. Hit the delete button, and we'll return the data to Excel. And we'll have it land right here. And now we want to go to Data, Queries and Connections. We will first come to the SQL and tell it to do, as we did in job cost, we'll sum, open brackets, close brackets, hit OK, and now we have one number appearing for our current assets. And we'll do a few of the other things. We'll click on the table so that we can click on properties. We will deselect adjust column width and choose the bottom value here over at existing cells. And we'll come up to design and turn off the header and banded rows. So now we have our current liability, our current assets. We'll do the same thing for current liabilities with an additional query. So this is an example of using a query to bring data into a single cell. Data, get data from other sources, Microsoft Query, our database, reposition the screen. Again, we're going to add the very same table, the general ledger accounts. And we're going to choose the very same field. And now I'm going to add a different set of criteria. So we're really, in this case, pulling the same field as we did in the query a few moments ago, but we're choosing different criteria. Our account has to be greater than or equal to 200. And our account has to be less than or equal to 240. Then we'll close this, and we can see we've got the range we wish to have. So I'm going to again delete this column, highlighting it, hitting the delete button, and now we're ready to return our data to Excel. Due to the header row, I will have it positioned here. There we are. We have the same situation as we did with current assets. We'll edit our query and tell it to summarize, SUM, open brackets, summarize this value. And if you look down below, you can see where our range has been automatically brought into the SQL command from MS Query. Click OK. We have a summarized value. We will come up to Data, Properties, turn off the column width adjustment, and click Overwrite. And Design, we will turn off the header row and the banded row. Now we have our value, but it has a credit amount, and we would really like to present it as a positive value on the sheet. So it has a negative amount here because it is liabilities, which carry a normal credit balance. So once again, we're going to come to our query. And at the end of balance, we're going to put times an asterisk -1. Remembering my 9th grade algebra, we'll click OK. And you can see we now have a positive balance. So let's calculate the current ratio. We are going to divide current assets by current liabilities. Now, normally I would put an equal sign here and just arrow over, but we get this rather cryptic message. So I'm going to escape, do equal sign, and simply put in E4. It's in column E, row 4. I'm sorry, 5. E5 divided by F5. And there we have our current ratio. So I'm going to go to Format, and I'll change it into a number with 2 decimal positions. And I'll pause for a moment and add some headings here. We've got some headings, and one thing to consider is in all the examples we've done so far in this series, we've either refreshed the data to pull up current data, or we've changed a data element such as vendor number or job number. In this case, since there is no area where we make a selection to put in an account number or something like that, you may wish to come to query definition, and choose the option to refresh this connection when opening the file. That way, when a manager opens this up, they will automatically have the most current information rather than information from the last time a refresh was done. And you may wish to do this with other queries also. Let's create a chart. We will highlight this area, insert, chart. We'll go with the pie chart. And here we are, our assets and liabilities. Now you could have a sheet like this with ratio analysis with your current ratio and inventory turns and whatever else you have that applies to your business, and have a very nice ratio analysis worksheet that is automatically updated just by going into it. Coming back to our first sheet, I've seen companies where they'll enter a job number and up will come job revenue, cash receipts, and various aspects of their job. They might do these range of phases here, another range of phases here, and so forth, and present the information in a way that makes sense for them. In part 3, we've retrieved information into a single cell with a non-table view. We've utilized variables. We've modified SQL commands several ways. And we've demonstrated a method to create spreadsheets non-Interac users will find easy to utilize. And note, always verify your sheet against an outside source, especially when you're first setting it up. For further capabilities, please watch Visual Link Part 4, Advanced Concepts. Thanks for viewing.